As we look at Tanzania at 60, we do have our two new guests to join us, and this time we'll be looking at the fact that youth, no doubt, is the focus. Joining us right now, we do have Ashura Payupa, who is indeed a youth activist. She joins us, and she'll be discussing much more, especially as Tanzania celebrates 60.
It's so good to have you join us on Youth Central, celebrating Tanzania at 60.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
All right, also joining us, you can see him there on the screen, is Ali Khan Satchu, Africa geoeconomic and also macro analyst. Thank you so much for being here as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so let's do this for the next 1 hour. Now, we'll go straight into it. We are all aware that the celebration is actually ongoing, 60 years. And the youth, no doubt, have also come out to mention that in as much as they're celebrating 60 years, they've drawn out a long list of what they are looking forward to see in the next years to come. I'm going to start with you first, right away, Payupa. Seem to like that name, by the way. First of all, let's ask this question. What are the youths actually eagerly anticipating as Tanzania turns 60?
This is a tricky question. Even though it's a fact that Tanzanian youth are more than half of the population, but I feel like we have stepped back. We have had some kind of a civic inertia from participating fully into politics. Because every elections year, youth has been used for entertainment and for voting, but nothing happens after, and we don't follow up. For example, recently, the ruling party has been demolishing youth businesses across the country. We call them street vendors. Considering that the employment rate is so high, so young people employ themselves by doing small businesses here and there, but then the government comes and demolish their businesses without providing alternative or discussing with us, the youth. So I feel like we have not shown our eagerness into participating fully into politics. For example, our fellow youth from Zambia has just shown the power of the youth by participating fully in their recent elections, and also making sure that the person that they voted for was announced. But in Tanzania, youth vote, but then it's like, oh, whoever is announced, it doesn't matter. It's like we don't feel like politics rule our life, and that politics is life in itself. And so we have to take full charge. And this is what I hope and wish, that the youth will take full charge of our life and the politics of the country today, because the ruling party has failed us for the past 6 decades.
All right. Payupa, you've mentioned that some of their businesses are being demolished, and these are the same youths that are being used for entertainment, especially when it comes to pre-election activities. But currently, as we speak, Tanzania turning 60, are the youths being given some form of incentives, or better still, are they actually given some form of tax rebates when they're actually engaging in businesses?
Not really. I mean, according to ruling party manifesto or policies, it might be written there, but in fact, it doesn't. Or you have to somehow be associated with the ruling party, or some kind of corruption, nepotism. You have to know somebody. It's not open. It's not accessible to all the youth in the country. A lot of us in Tanzania is about surviving and not living. We strive, we work so hard, even when the education system is not functioning and is failing us. There is no a way that you can get the skills that you need to start business today out of school, even the capital. So young people strive on their own to make the living. And then the government only knows to come and say, no, Ella, now I'm mixing with Norwegian. Oh, no, you cannot do business, or this is not allowed. So it's more about you can do it than you can do. There is no opportunity and possibility for young people to access and have a better life that we should have after 60 years of independence.
Okay, you're looking at the issue of youth and the economy, and I know that one major issue is the part of education there for youth, and of course unemployment. How do you think that we can better the education system in Tanzania? Because one of the issues that we saw is the fact that most times what people study cannot go on with what we have in the business environment. So how can we better educational system in Tanzania?
That's a very good question. I feel like we have to actually improve our education system, because it's like producing people who are not needed by the current market. And I am afraid that the ruling party is not interested in changing, or it has no political will in changing the current education system, because it's serving them. When you have ignorant people, that's a good platform for you to do whatever you do, like the way it does now, looting the country, stealing the elections, and just continue with the status quo. When we got independent in 1961, our first president said that we had 3 challenges to fight, and that were poverty, ignorance, and diseases. What have we done so far? Even in part to eliminate one of them? No. And CCM is not interested, unfortunately, to change the education system that will prepare youth for the market today and the future, and for innovation, and for, like, the world is going on the 21st century, and Tanzanian education is like from 18th century. It's about memorizing, it's about cramming. It's not really revolutionizing our mind and providing opportunities, considering that Tanzania is so rich in resources that we can think and utilize our own resources for our own betterment. But the ruling party is not interested, unfortunately. But we have really to change the education system to prepare youth for today and the future.
Quite deep. All right, it's time for me to bring in Ali Khan, Satchu. Ali, you've looked at the economy of economies of African countries, talk about the sub-Saharan and the likes. And Tanzania is our focus today. Looking at the fact that they are blessed, especially when you talk about mining, you also make mention of real estate, which is
tourism.
Tourism as well. Kilimanjaro and the likes. What do you think Tanzania needs to do right in order to ensure that there's a lot of improvements, especially concerning the economy?
So it's a very rich economy in terms of resources. If I can just give you some extra flavors to what you were talking about. Tourism, as you've mentioned, a very big income stream, obviously difficult during the pandemic. It's seen quite a slide. Mining, gold, other precious minerals, and bear in mind the entire 21st century economy is based on a lot of minerals that are only found in Africa. Then you've got the natural gas discoveries near the border with Mozambique. This was in the slow lane for a while, but I think Minister January Makamba is now trying to accelerate the extraction of that gas. Very rich agricultural economy, which is very helpful in this day and age where we're seeing surging food prices. And Tanzania is a little bit like Uganda, that they can provide enough food to feed their people at good prices. And also then they have substantial exports in that space. Cashew nuts is just one example. So overall, it has enormous potential. I think a lot of people compare it to its neighbors in Kenya in particular and talk about how Kenya's economy is supposedly bigger, but Kenya's been rebasing its economy more frequently than Tanzania. And I would argue that Tanzania probably has a bigger economy when you look at it in resource terms. I think you were speaking earlier about education. And I think that's one of the challenges when it comes to unlocking the potential of any economy. More valuable than resources in the ground is the human capital that walks upon it. But the human capital isn't optimized unless you're educating it for the 21st century. And I think your previous speaker was touching on that very issue. And if Tanzania really wants to accelerate growth, it's going to have to look at how it educates this demographic dividend in time. So a lot of potential in the economy. It slowed down a little bit last year. I expect it to accelerate over the coming years. A lot of potential. And of course, you've got this big pipeline that the Ugandans are looking to build to the port of Tanga. So yes, I would rank it. It's punching below its weight as an economy. It can punch a lot better, I think.
Okay, Ali, as an African geoeconomic and macro analyst, we know that Tanzania depends so much on agriculture for its revenue and income. How well would you say the agricultural technology of Tanzania has grown so far?
That's a good question. I would have thought that, it's like the majority of Africa, really, we're only now beginning to embrace agri-tech. Our challenges are, firstly, that, we have a lot of small farmers, and knitting together smallholder farmers into a bigger whole in order to increase production and deliver better prices to them. It's not an easy task. We have a lot of interest in businesses looking to deploy the mobile phone and deploy better farming practices through the use of the mobile phone. And we're seeing good results coming out of that. But I would definitely say at this point in time, Tanzania, probably no different to the rest of Africa, that we haven't deployed technology effectively to maximize production. And therefore, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, frankly, in terms of increasing production across the continent, not just in Africa, not just in Tanzania. So I think potential is there, but we're still a little bit, in the previous century when it comes to how we're deploying technology in the agricultural space.
Tech. Well, how has the development of rural areas affected economic growth in Tanzania? We have lots of rural areas in Tanzania. How has it affected economic growth?
It's quite interesting, actually, on that point. I was looking at a study which was saying that, actually the rural communities are better off than people estimate on the basis of food security and a number of other things. The rural areas, of course, are typically the stronghold of CCM and also the stronghold of these independence parties. You look at ZANU-PF, where it gets its votes, and you look at other places, they tend to be politically very much aligned with the government of the time. I think in many respects, these old independence parties want to keep them like that. There is a tremendous amount of potential in the rural areas, I think, that can be deployed and utilized, and that economy can be raised. I would say that if I look at the rural economies across sub-Saharan Africa, not just in Tanzania, they're not optimized for growth. Prices that are being paid to them are not reflecting market prices. Let me give you an example. Coffee prices are at record highs, but when you look at the prices paid to the farmer, they're still extremely poor. And I think over time, if we're going to improve rural livelihoods and the rural economy, we've got to look at also what we're paying to our farmers. We've got to look at the parastatals that are meant to be supporting them, but in many cases are not doing what they should be doing. They're just very expensive yokes around the neck of these farmers. But essentially the rural economy, very important part of the Tanzanian economy, a lot of potential.
Okay, you talked about incentive for farmers. Has security in any way affected economic growth? We know in lots of African countries, security has affected the way farmers are able to produce. So do you feel security has affected economic growth in Tanzania?
The farming in Eastern Africa has not suffered a security problem to the same extent that it has in places like Nigeria, where you've got, both in the east and northeast and northwest, you've got very big security challenges. Here in East Africa in particular, in Tanzania, the security issue is, I wouldn't say is at the extreme it is in parts of West Africa. There is a security issue in the southern area of Tanzania bordering Mozambique, of course, where you had the insurgency in northern Mozambique, which seemed to have quite a connection with people in that part of Tanzania as well, and there's been spillovers on a number of occasions. But I don't think that security is of the same importance in Tanzania as it would be somewhere like Nigeria for farmers.
All right, let me go straight to you, Ashura. Ashura, let's look at the fact that the United Nations Economic Reports for Africa has mentioned that 10.3% of youths are actually unemployed. So what opportunities lie in wait for the youths there in Tanzania? What opportunities are open for them?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. A lot of youth are trying out. There's a lot of startups now. They're going into a digital economy and skills and activities attached to a digital world. But then there's so little support from the government, which makes it like only the privileged youth that are able to explore and access these opportunities. And yeah, there's a lot of able youth who are not able to work because of a high unemployment rate, which is so unfortunate because any nation that would like to see it progress, they have to utilize their youth. But in Tanzania, we have a lot of youth who are unemployed, and those who are trying, for example, to do businesses on the street, street vendors, get harassed all the time by the authority. And those privileged or who have been exposed, for example, if they have studied abroad, they're able to tap into the digital economy and activities. So there is a hope, actually, that youth are trying. But the only issue that I see that a lot of youth feel like the government, the politics has nothing to do with the way of life and how things go in the country, which is not true. Okay. Because the government determine the life, determine the present and the future. And so we have to take charge and hold the government officials accountable and participate fully into voting, into elections, and make sure that we can only have someone safe that we have voted for and that we can hold them accountable so that we can have a better life for a lot of us youth and all Tanzanians in general.
Ashura, 2025 seems far, but at the same time close. Do we see more youth political parties coming up for 2025 for a better election?
I hope so, because we have promising parties in Tanzania, opposition parties. Because for me, I am still looking forward for the second independence from the ruling party, because the ruling party has departed from its founding values. It has become so corrupt and so dictatorial, and this is the issue here. CCM has managed to fool people that Tanzania is a democratic country because they change faces every 5 or 10 years. Unlike other countries where you see, you can pinpoint, like, this guy is corrupt and he's looting the country and he's doing so and so. But in Tanzania, it's like, oh, there is a ruling party that changes faces and therefore there is a democracy, which is not true. So we have to go away. We have to make CCM resign from the Tanzanian politics and just have something new. And that's the idea of having a democratic process in the country, that we are able to elect a different party and then see and test them after 5-10 years. We can elect another one. CCM has no authority to run Tanzania as their own company and then failing us for the last 6 decades, where even today as we're speaking, my uncle is not able to watch me on TV because there's no power. After 6 years of independence, people stay 24 hours without power. How can we see progress this way? Because even when youth are trying to do businesses, they need electricity to save food or to do a salon activity or whatever. We need power to do any kind of activity today. But then there's no power now. There's blackout in Tanzania. So as a youth, I feel like we have to take charge. We have to participate fully into politics because politics determine our life and the future.
All right, you've actually expatiated on some of the points that we would later on touch on, but let's also ask you about the youths. More importantly, is Tanzania looking at any opportunity of offering free loans to the youths, if there's any at all? Are there access to free loans? Are there access to, take for instance, fintechs and other companies in different parts of Africa gain access to loans, seedings, and so on? Is there any opportunity for the youth out there in Tanzania as you look at 60 years?
Is that for me?
Yes, that's for you.
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier on, according to policies and manifesto of the ruling party, there is a possibility for youth to get it's not really free loan, but if you're in a group, you can get some kind of affordable loan from the local municipals, from the local governments, and that you can do business and then return. So you have to be in groups. But then I don't know its accessibility, as I said earlier, because there's a lot of nepotism, and that you have to be, for example, from the ruling party. I'm not sure if they know that you are an opposition member, that you can get this kind of loan, because now it has become so much about if you're ruling party, then you're more of a Tanzanian than if you're not, which is really a big problem. So yes, according to policies, there are possibility for young people to form themselves in groups and get some affordable loans. But then I'm not sure of its accessibility and availability on time when youth need these kind of loans.
All right. Okay, so let me go straight to Ali Khan. Ali Khan, we've seen other countries, African countries, take for instance Gambia, and not forgetting Rwanda, who have actually made a lot of, who have actually grown the economy using nothing more than tourism as well, which happens to be the major driver. We've also seen Tanzania blessed with these arms or these tourist opportunities from mining, not forgetting to the Mount Kilimanjaro and the likes. Is there any possibility that the economy could see a growth in rates, in numbers, in opportunities for the youths as they clock 60?
So, to turn to tourism, of course, you used two good examples. One was Rwanda, which successfully repriced its main tourism product, which is the gorillas, to prices which were much higher than previously. And have continued to show good earnings. They kind of targeted fewer visitors, higher prices in Rwanda. And in many ways, it's a bit of a niche market. Tanzania, in terms of tourism, has tremendous tourism. You've got Serengeti, you've got a whole bunch of other game parks. You've got Mount Kilimanjaro, which is very popular. You've got places, the coast, you've got Zanzibar, just to name a few. And Tanzania has a very successful tourism operation. Number of visitors are quite high, but obviously, there is tremendous potential to get more. And then bear in mind, when it comes to tourism, tourism has a very long tail in terms of employment. One person, you get lots of people who can earn a living off tourism. The courier, seller, the driver, the curator, the accommodation provider. So it has a very long tail of employment. So I think, yes, to your question, can it provide more employment? Yes, it can, definitely. If there is a very strong multiplier effect in tourism in the employment space. Reports show that for each tourist who visits, up to 6 or 7 people can make a living off that visit potentially, which is a very, very high number. So I think there's a lot of potential on that front. Just to quickly touch on what your previous guest was talking about, the digital economy. I think Tanzania has lagged the digital economy in terms of Africa. If you look at Africa as a whole, every other day now you've got a unicorn in Nigeria as people look to target that market. Kenya, I think, was fortunate in that it embraced mobile money and a fast internet and brought it at reasonable prices. So you had a very big uptake here as well. And now Egypt is pushing forward. And that's why I think that, if you're going to go for, I remember Jack Ma was in Kenya, and at a talk, somebody said, but our infrastructure is so terrible. And he turned to everybody in the room and said, you're all on 4G. That's the new infrastructure. And I think in Tanzania, if it wants to accelerate the digital economy, needs to accelerate the internet, mobile money, they slapped a tax on it, for example, not too long ago, which reduced the volumes that were going through it. That was a poor policy decision, and I think they should, they shouldn't have done that. So I think Tanzania has potential, but in order to get going on that digital economy side and start employing more young people in it and creating more excitement, because it's a big market opportunity, They just need to embrace it and become more joined up in their thinking and how they're addressing that market.
Okay, Ali, you talked about digital economy, but for that to grow, we know that power is necessary. And earlier on, Ashura talked about no light in Tanzania. So how can Tanzania grow its power sector?
That was an interesting point that was made, and I heard it, and this is a phenomenon we're seeing in many parts of Africa. I mean, you know, in Nigeria, you hear the constant buzz of generators, for example. And really, without power, we're going nowhere. We've got to switch the lights on if we want to get the continent, Tanzania and the continent moving. Tanzania is currently in a power deficit situation, and this will continue for a while. Look, they need to accelerate. If you want to deal with power, you know, Tanzania's got an abundance of gas that should be accelerated. There is an abundance of the sun. So you look at whether you can do more solar power. In the medium term, you'll have the oil coming out of Uganda as well. And then there are some micro solutions for power. I've seen a lot of solar power businesses which are delivering solar power to the village level, to individuals at that level for $1 a day. And, you know, they will have light, they'll be able to recharge their phones, and if they pay a bit more, they'll even have a television and they can watch a whole bunch of programs. So look, there are solutions. It's not as if there are no solutions and we're going to remain in the dark forever. But then you've got to create an environment which allows these solutions to be delivered. One environment is obviously at the high level, and I think under President Magufuli, there was a go slow with the gas prospect. There were arguments with everybody who were going to provide capital for that. I think the tune has changed there now, so maybe you'll see a quicker development of the gas opportunity. A lot of the people who were providing solar at the micro level told me it was a very difficult environment to operate in, and they all kind of gave up and went for other markets. So you've got to create an enabling environment in order to solve the power issue. If you don't solve the power issue, you're not going to have an economy.
All right. So it seems Kayupa has the challenges and Can has the solutions. So, Kayupa, let's also look at the fact that the youths in general, are they interested in politics as it stands?
Yeah, it looks like there is a hope that youth today are interested into politics. And when politics was better the last 10 years, there were a lot of young people in the parliament. Unfortunately, in the last year's election, 2020, the ruling party stole all of it. They wanted to, have just one party parliament. But there were a lot of young people participating as candidates and also going into campaigns and doing a lot of activity. So I hope that this will continues, because it's so important to see the Tanzania that we want. And the fact that we are more than half of the population, we have to make it happen. Because the first president, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere, was only 39 when he became president. So he was a young man. He was eager, and he was working so hard for our beautiful country that we have today. So we also, youth of today, have to take charge and have to make sure that we are going to have good politics, because that's what determines the present and the future.
Okay, Ali, you seem to always make Nigeria in most of your illustrations. I guess Nigeria is on the limelight, so to say. But we're looking at 60 years independence anniversary for Tanzania. What are your hopes from now on?
Together, firstly, obviously, there is a political challenge in Tanzania, and I think, the ruling party is suppressing a lot of political aspirations, whether it's opposition parties or other voices. I was hoping the new president would accommodate these voices, but, unfortunately, what we've seen so far is a quite a repressive approach to alternate voices. So I think, firstly, I would like to see a more democratic space, which will then allow more youthful participation and allow people to feel more empowered. I think from an economic perspective, I think Tanzania has enormous untapped potential. And, a more coherent, less abrasive and less adversarial policy-making approach, I think, could unlock a lot of growth. President Magufuli was very abrasive. Kind of thought everyone was out there to rip them off when they're not necessarily trying to do that. They're just trying to earn a return. And, when you look at investors, it's not just international investors you need to look at. You need to look at local investors. They are the most important ones. And at the end of the day, make it a more attractive investment destination for the average Tanzanian citizen. Your other guest was saying you set up a shop. They're an investor. They're investing in doing a shop, and then it gets knocked down for no good reason. That's outrageous, right? I mean, that is reducing economic opportunity, particularly amongst the entrepreneurial people in your society, who are the ones you want to be rewarding because they've got off their backside and trying to do something. So I think a lot of potential. I think it needs more political flexibility at the ruling party level, which is a phenomenon that I think we're seeing across a lot of other African countries as well as you go down south. And I think, get back to one really important point that I've looked at over the last 100 years, the single biggest key to unlocking progress is actually education. And when I've looked into the Tanzanian education system, it seems very, very old, old school. And I think that could be reinvented. That would make, the youth, which are the demographic dividend, more optimal for the economy of the 21st century economy. And I think Tanzania will progress a great deal. Make no mistake, the country has tremendous potential. And unlike other African countries, is coherent in terms the tribal issue is not that big. It is a coherent society. This is one of the single most important legacies of President Nyerere, I think. And that gives it even a lot of potential in an environment where you just have to look around at the lack of coherence in countries. Look at what's happening in Ethiopia, look at what's happening in other countries. That gives them a lot of potential because it means that once everyone gets focused, they don't have these side issues that other countries have.
All right, quite interesting. So our guests are Ashura Kayupa and Ali Khan Satchu. If you just tuned in, this is News Central. We're taking a look at Tanzania at 16.